there, welcome to Seasoned Liberally 101. My name is Cecil. Today we're going to be cooking stock. It was the most chosen poll answer that I put up as a poll for people who were interested in a brand new video. The choice that was chosen the second most was roasting a chicken or roasting poultry. Now, if you want to check out a roasting turkey video that I just posted, that is linked right now on the screen, and so you can learn how to roast a bird if that's the one that you decided to choose. But a lot of people wanted to learn how to make stock, and so that's what I'm going to do today. So let's talk about what stock is. Stock is the backbone of soups, sauces, and stews. When you're cooking in the kitchen, very often recipes will call for stock. You can buy it in the store. It normally comes in a container, or you can sometimes use, there's instant stocks out there that you can mix with hot water and create a stock-like substance. But making your own stock is really very easy. It's a little time consuming. I'm going to show you two ways to do it today. One that's a lot less time consuming. But one of the things that you're going to notice once you start making your own stock is you're going to find that it really does add a lot of flavor to the dishes that you're creating. Now, stock is a very thin liquid, and it shouldn't be confused with a soup base or a broth. It is actually it is fortified with bones rather than meat. Now, there can be some meat in there. As you're going to see today, I'm going to be putting a little bit of meat in my stock because there is some that is still left on the bones that I didn't clean off. And then there's also some meat that I will be adding just for a little bit of extra flavor. But most of the time, it's just bones that you're using. It's bones, water, and then we add aromatics. I told you about these in the chicken thighs video that I created. It's called mirepoix, which is celery, carrots, and onions. And then it's just adding a tiny bit of parsley to that and a little bit of spices. And that normally cooks for a long time. And what that does when it cooks for a long time over low heat is that it extracts the collagen from the bones. And the bones then fortify the water and give you what is that great mouthfeel when you taste a soup or a sauce and someone says this has a lot of body. That body comes from the stock. That's where it comes from. So the bones are a super important part of this, and so that's where we're going to start. It's actually the first ingredient, of course, is water because it's the biggest ingredient, but bones are the second ingredient, and so that's what we're going to do right now is I'm going to show you the bones that I'm going to be using. This doesn't have a recipe per se. You can, if you want, use 8 pounds of bones to 6 quarts of water. If you want, that's 1.5 gallons. That's sort of the average that you want to measure the bones out if you're doing a large recipe of it in a big stock pot. But you could also cut that down into portions, or you could just eyeball it. The thing is stock is not one of these things that's so rigidly measured that it absolutely has to be precise. So I'm going to give you a guideline today on how to make stock, and just use it to the best of your ability. It doesn't, like I say, it doesn't have to be perfectly measured out. So I'm showing you today the bones that I'm using. These bones are from the turkey, and the turkey, like I said, the roast turkey is one of the recipes that I just made on the regular channel. And so this is the backbone of that turkey. I cut the backbone out, and as you can see, it still has a little bit of meat on it. Like I said, there is some meat on some of these bones. I have the 2 wing tips, and those are going to go in here. I have the wishbone, the gizzard, which is mostly meat, but again, that's flavorful, and I'm not going to use it in the gravy today, so I'm just going to use the gizzard inside of the stock. And then I have the neck of the turkey. A little bit of skin here that I cut off too. That's going to also add some nice flavor to this turkey stock. Now, another thing I have here is these thigh bones of chicken. And I have these because sometimes recipes that I get call for boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and I picked up bone-in, skin-on thighs. And so I'll take the skin off and I'll debone them. And I'll do it nice and quick. As you can see, these are not perfectly deboned. There's plenty of meat on these bones. It's actually kind of, I actually did a pretty bad job on some of these when I was cutting them up. But all the better for our stock today. And what I do is I just reserve these bones, any bones that I cut out of poultry when I'm making poultry during the week. I'll just cut them out, and then when I cut them out, I'll just save them in the freezer until I'm ready to make stock, and then I'll pull them out. You can also, from what I hear, I've never done this, you can also use a used rotisserie chicken as part of the stock bones too. I've never done that. I'm not quite sure how much collagen you can get out of something like that, but I'm sure it will impart a lot of flavor into your stock. When you're using poultry bones, there's two types of stock. There's a brown stock and a white stock. White stock is normally something you would use if color really mattered to you. If you really wanted it to be sort of a very light colored broth or a light colored sauce, you might make white stock. And to make white stock, really all you do is you put your bones, these bones, you would drop them into cold water, put cold water over the top of them, set them on the stove, and bring it to a boil. And then as soon as it boiled, you would dump that water, and then you would remove your bones, add your mirepoix to the pot, add your chicken bones back in, fill it up with cold water again, and then start it over. You boil it once to get sort of all the blood and all the other matter out of these bones to start out so it doesn't cloud your stock. Now, if you're gonna make the brown stock, which is what we're gonna make today, you would just brown your bones in the oven, because most times what you want is a nice hearty looking stock for the stuff you're making at home. And so I almost always make brown stock. And so that's what I'm gonna do today. So now a couple of these bones are pretty big. And the thing is the thing you have to remember when you're making stock is the smaller the bones, the shorter the cook time. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna use the heel of my knife here. I'm gonna keep my other hand nice and far away. I'm gonna use the heel of my knife to actually break through this backbone in several different places, so that what it's gonna do is it's gonna decrease the cooking time. So that's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it a little bit here, using the heel of my knife, like I said, just to cut through and cut it down into a nice little chunk like that. Now, if you have a cleaver, make short work of that, okay? I'm gonna cut this neck up too a little bit, because I wanna make sure that this cooks fast as well. Now you might have to hit that a couple times, give it a couple whacks, but I like to cut it up. If you're gonna cook this overnight, you don't even have to worry about it. You could just leave both of those full. You could roast those full, no problem. I'm gonna cook this in a pressure cooker today to show you the fast method, but I'm also gonna show you how I would cook this if I were gonna cook this in a pan on the stove. Now what I'm doing is I'm just laying these out on a pan right now. This doesn't have to be cut, this doesn't have to be cut. I will cut this. So now this is the gizzard. This is nice and meaty, and I'm actually going to be using this. I'm actually going to be putting this into the stock too. So these don't have to be cut. I'm not going to cut these. I'm just going to put these in the pan. And now, stock normally doesn't have a lot of salt in it. I normally don't put any salt at all, because what you don't want to do, the stock is concentrating a lot of flavor, and I don't want to salt this a lot and then have a salty liquid afterwards. I like to make sure that my stock is pretty much unsalted. So I'm not going to salt these, but I am going to add a little oil, because I do want them to roast up. I want them to get nice and brown. And so that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little oil on here, and then I'm going to just rub it. Later on, the fat of the stock will be pulled off, so we don't have to worry about that. But I want to make sure that there's a little bit of oil on there, and I'm going to put these directly into the oven. So now we got to cut our mirepoix, okay? We've done this before for other things. This doesn't necessarily have to be cut in any way particular to how you're gonna cook it. Now, you want it diced a little finer if you want this stock to be done sooner. But you can also, like I say, practice your knife skills right now. If you want to practice your dice or practice cutting things into fine dice, this is a great time to do it. It really doesn't matter, because it's all going to just disintegrate in the end, and you're going to discard it, so it doesn't really matter. But if you're in a hurry, this doesn't really need to be cut very much, but I do want to cut it a little bit because I'm going to brown it in the oven with those bones. So I'm just going to do a quick dice on this. I've already set my cutting board up, and I have my refuse bowl here, like we talked about in the other video, to make sure my workstation stays as clean as possible. Now I'm pulling off the final outer layer here. You don't have to do this. Some people leave some of the skins on and even use the skins in stock. I'm not a huge fan of that because there can be some dirt in there and it can make your stock a little gritty. But I guess if you wash it off, it should be okay. I normally discard that, and I also do the same thing when I peel my carrots because the carrots can have a little bit of grit in there as well. And so I normally peel my carrots and I'll wash this off before I actually cut it because I don't want to get any grit in the stock in the end. So that's what I do. But if you wash these are certainly usable in stock because, again, it's all just going to get thrown out eventually. So if you take the time to really clean these very well, you can use them in stock. So now I'm using this little piece of skin to help hold on to it. Remember, that's a nice little trick, especially when you're first learning how to cut an onion. It gives you that little handhold, and that allows you to have more control over your knife and over the thing you are cutting. Keeps your hand out of danger. It's a nice little handle for the onion. All right. So now I am going to put a bunch of this in here on one side. Now remember, our mirepoix is 2 parts onion to 1 part carrot, 1 part celery. And so we want to keep that same ratio when we cook here. It's a full onion, 2 small carrots, and 2 slices of celery is normally a pretty good ratio. So I'm going to peel my carrot very quickly here. And again, you don't have to be super, you don't have to pay a lot of attention to it because, like I say, a lot of this stuff is just going to be discarded in the end. But I just make sure I get all the dark spots off. Anything that looks like it could be dirt in there, I want to make sure I pull it off of there. But if I spent, several minutes at the sink there, I could cut all of the, I could wash all of those lines away, and then you could just essentially use it without peeling the carrot. Now this, again, doesn't need to be perfect, and I am cutting this quickly, but you can, again, practice your cutting skills. So you can cut it in half, you can cut it in quarters, you can try to dice it if you want. It's a nice way to practice in the kitchen. Very, very infrequently we will get 50 pounds worth of carrots dropped at our station like we would if we were to be working in a industrial kitchen. So it's nice to have these moments where we can actually practice our skills. So now I got this. I'm just going to slice this really quickly. And we have to roast this in the oven until it turns brown. And again, I'm not going to salt it. I normally would, if I was going to be trying to roast something, I would salt it a little to pull some of the moisture out, but I'm not going to do that because I do not want to salt my stock. So I'm going to add a little oil and I'm just going to mix it with my hand. Cover it as much as I can. And then I'm going to put it in the oven and try to get a little bit of brown on top of it. So our bones roasted for about 45 minutes, and so did the vegetables. Now, if you see your onions starting to get a little charred up, you want to take it out. You definitely don't want to you want to make sure you're not burning the vegetables. It's almost certainly going to take a little longer for your bones to roast and get brown before the vegetables get brown. Now, to construct stock, the rest of the stock recipe is super easy. What we're gonna do is, if you're gonna cook this on the stove, what you do is you put your bones in the bottom of the pan, in the bottom of the biggest pot you have. Then you'd put the vegetables over the top. You'd add a little bit of parsley stems, which is what I'm gonna add inside, and then a little bit of spice, whatever spices you wanna put in. I'm putting in about 15 peppercorns and a couple of bay leaves. The rest of this, you really don't want to add a ton of other herbs to it. You can add, if you want, a little thyme, a little rosemary, a little oregano might work, but I would stay away from adding too many herbs to your stock. It's unnecessary right now. The final thing you're going to flavor is where you want all that flavor. This is really just the body that we're trying to get out of this, out of these bones. So put all that in, cover it with cold water up till, you know, about, you don't want to go too high, but you definitely want to get up pretty high on the stock pot with as much cold water as you can. And then you want to bring it to a boil as fast as you can. So bring it to a nice, fast, hard boil, and then turn it down really, really low. So it is just bubbling, just barely bubbling. That's low on a gas stove, maybe like 2 or 3 on your electric stove or on your induction, and let that cook for a very, very long time. You're going to want to let it go. I sometimes let these go overnight, and they can cook overnight. And then once, if it needs water, if it starts to reduce down too much and it starts to get so that the bones are starting to become exposed, you need to add water to that. Most of the time I make sure it's completely topped off before I go to bed at night, and then I'll check it in the morning, and most of the time it certainly hasn't come down that far. But just remember, you got to make sure that there's enough liquid in that pot. You do not want it to run out of liquid, evaporate completely, and burn. And you definitely don't want it too hot, because it will do that if you let it run for a very long time. Now, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to show you a tool that I really, really love, and that is worth investing in. It's called a pressure cooker. Now, pressure cookers they're somewhat expensive. I think they can run to about $100 to $150. This one here was a gift. It was a little more expensive than that. But the Instapot is one that I hear a lot of people really like. I don't own one of those. I own a different brand. But they are excellent at cooking things that would normally cook for a really long time very quickly. What it does is it takes and it pressurizes the atmosphere inside of the pot, and it makes it so that it can get up to a much higher temperature, and it boils the liquid inside at a much higher temperature. So what would normally take 3 to 4 hours on a stovetop can be done in 30 or 40 minutes in a pressure cooker. It's really a wonderful device for making braises, for making stocks, for making, I can make rice or beans in here in a very short amount of time. We're talking dry beans in a very short amount of time, rice in minutes, and it's perfect every time. So pressure cookers are great tools, and I really do love using a pressure cooker. And like I said, you can do this on the stove, but I'm going to show you how to do this in a pressure cooker, and it's done in like an hour in a pressure cooker. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to dump in all of my bones. So let me get the bones. Over here. And as you can see, these are nice and brown. They browned up in the oven. And so we're just dropping them right into the bottom here. And I'm going to scrape up any of the bits that I can on the bottom of this. And I don't care if some of that oil and grease goes in there. I'm going to skim this off the top when it's done. Remember, if you're making your stock the same day as your turkey, you're going to want to have a pressure cooker or something like it. If you're making your stock the night before you make your turkey, that's fine. But stock takes a long time to make. And so don't plan on trying to make a stovetop stock the same day you're making your turkey. Cut the back out of your turkey the night before, or get your bones ready the night before, and get your stock ready so it's ready in the morning or in the afternoon when you're making your turkey. So now I'm going to put my vegetables in, and these vegetables have browned. As you can see, there's a little bit of brown bits in there. That's okay. Some of these have browned up really nicely. Some of it got a little char on them. Again, it's okay. It's not going to bitter up the stock too much. We want to make sure, though, the more fine your onions are cut, the better chance that they have of burning. So be careful. Like I say, if you want to practice your knife skills, that's fine. but be careful when you cook them, because the more you cut them, the easier they are to burn. So now I'm going to sprinkle these parsley stems into the top here. You can also put a little bit of, if you have fresh thyme or fresh rosemary, 1 or 2 sprigs in there would be fine. I'm going to put in my bay leaves and my peppercorns. And now what I'm going to do is just add water to this. Now this is cold water. And I'm just going to add water until, and I'm going to eyeball this to be above the bones by a little, but by not too much. I don't want it, I'm not going to fill this whole thing up. I'm going to fill this thing about halfway up. It still needs maybe 2 more of these. So maybe 1 more, and we're good to go. So this is not coming up all the way to the top of this, but there's a goodly amount of liquid in there. Now, if I'm making a stock on the stovetop, I can fill that up really, really high, because that water is going to evaporate. In here, the water is really not going to evaporate too much. Okay, so we don't want to put in too much liquid in here, because then we're just going to have a watery stock that we're going to have to reduce on the stove anyway. So we're not putting a ton of liquid in here. We're only putting a little bit in. So I have it set so you could see it. I'm going to turn it back around in a second, but I have to read what this says. There's a chance that if you have another type of device, it'll probably have a stock setting on it. But if it doesn't, just remember that the pressure is 12 and that it's going to be set for a full hour's time. Now that's going to take longer than an hour. The cook time, once it's up to pressure, is an hour. So it will take, about 2 hours for this stock to cook. But that's so much faster, and it will be such a great product out of this. It'll be really a wonderful product out of this in comparison to how long it takes on a stovetop. So I'm going to start it, and I'm going to turn it around. So here we go. I just powered it on. We're going to turn it around so you can see it's cooking itself up. Now, your top piece here on your pressure cooker, you got to make sure that that's in the right position, because if it's not, this will just steam until it powers off, and then you'll have to text your husband and say, I don't know, I think it's broken. And you'll do that over and over and over again, even though you got told that this should be in the correct position.
Hey.
All right, we're gonna get the stock started, and it's gonna take a couple hours, but it'll be a wonderful, very beautiful bodied stock when it's finally finished. All right, so the steam is now being released from my pressure cooker. And if you were to cook this on your stove, it would have cooked overnight or for a very long time. Maybe if you started in the morning, you would cook it until later on in the evening. And it's finished. Now, a couple of things you need to remember about this stock. The first is that if you were doing something that really, really required clarity, some stock to be beautifully clear, like say you were going to make consommé, which is a enriched soup that is ultra clear, you wouldn't do what I'm going to show you to do right now. But for most uses of stock, we can eliminate the sort of protocols we use in the kitchen to make sure that stock stays very clear, just for expediency's sake. If you were to take this stock and what you would do is you would dip a ladle in it and make sure you didn't take any of the vegetable matter or any of the bones with it, and you would slowly put it into through a cheesecloth, through a strainer, and it's a whole thing if you want to try to maintain clarity. But for home cooks, for just using stock for a sauce or for a quick addition for a soup, we don't normally pay a lot of attention to that. So inside here is my stock. I'm going to pull my stock out, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this pot out of the way so that I can show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to pour this directly into a bowl. So this is my stock. It's a really nice deep color. We've cooked it for, like I said, about a little over an hour. It is ready to be poured. Now, like I said, we could ladle this out and be really careful with it, but I don't think that that's necessary. What I'm going to use this for is a soup, and so it doesn't really need to be super clear. I actually like the way it looks if it's got a little bit of mud in it. So I'm just going to pour this directly into a strainer. Now, if you wanted to, you could run this through a strainer that is, you know, got a little more fine mesh. I have one of these. I have one of these strainers here, and I'll show you that I could instead, if I wanted to, pour it directly in here. And so if you wanted a finer mesh strainer, you could use a finer mesh strainer. So now, what we have is all of this refuse, which is essentially junk now, and we're gonna throw this out now in a culinary in a restaurant kitchen or an industrial kitchen. They may do this again. They may actually make another stock with these bones. I'm thinking pronouncing it as remoulage is what it's called. And it's a second, they call it, that's a French for second wetting, I think is what it's called. And so it's essentially they would make a stock again with these bones. But these are essentially used. One thing you're going to notice is that there is a little bit of fat on the top, and it's starting to congeal on the top. Tomorrow, I'm going to put this in the fridge overnight, and tomorrow it'll be solid on the top, and you could just take it right off. The other thing you're going to notice too is that this stock, if you cooked it for a nice long time or if you used a pressure cooker, it may look like jelly tomorrow. You may shake it and it may actually be solid. That's okay. That's actually good for a stock. That means you got a lot of collagen out of the bones. So that's why it's gelatinous, and that will add to the mouthfeel of a stock. Now, I would not put this directly into your refrigerator. In an industrial kitchen or a culinary, a kitchen, a restaurant kitchen, you would take this bowl and you would put it into an ice bath, and then you would bring it down, shock it down to temperature very quickly, and then put it into your fridge. This could sit out for 45 minutes or so, and it'll be coolish, and that'll be fine. If you want to get rid of some of your ice, you're certainly welcome to put this in an ice bath and bring it down into temperature, and then put it into your fridge. So that's how you make stock. Later on in this channel, this 101 channel, I'm going to show you a lot of different videos on how to use stock, and so this will be a good reference for you for later on. Remember that you could do this with any bones. You could do this with beef bones. You could do this with I use turkey and chicken today. You can do this with pork, and if you're going to do it with pork, sometimes people throw pork's feet in there. They'll buy a pork foot and throw it directly in there. It's really wonderful for stock. The process for fish would be a little different, and I may at a future date show you how to make what they call fish fumet, which is like a stock, but it's made very quickly on a stovetop. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This week is the week of Thanksgiving. I did a roast turkey recipe that you can find on the channel, and you can watch that if you like. But I also encourage people this week, if you have a little extra on your table and you're feeling, you feel like you're a little safer than other people in our society who have lost their jobs because of the pandemic. Many in the service industry, both cooks and servers, are hurting right now. So if you have a little extra this year, I encourage you to give either to your local food pantry or to modestneeds.org. Plenty of other organizations out there that are helping people at this time of year. If you have plenty, be sure to share this year. So thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video, please let me know in the comments below.